The Union Jack still flutters proudly above Buckingham Palace, its vibrant colours standing in stark contrast to the gathering storm clouds that loom over the British monarchy. What was meant to be a year of celebration following the coronation of King Charles III has instead become a period of profound uncertainty, as the institution faces challenges that threaten its very foundation. The streets of London, normally abuzz with royal enthusiasm during the Trooping the Colour celebrations, now carry an undercurrent of apprehension, a palpable tension that even the most carefully choreographed pageantry cannot mask. A monarch's frailty and the weight of the crown. The image of King Charles III riding in a carriage rather than on horseback during this year's Trooping the Colour ceremony spoke volumes to those attuned to the subtle language of royal symbolism. This concession to his health, necessitated by his ongoing cancer treatment, served as a sobering reminder of mortality's inexorable march. The monarch, who waited decades to ascend the throne, now finds his reign overshadowed by questions of longevity and succession. Medical experts unaffiliated with the palace have begun quietly speculating about the progression of the king's condition, noting that while modern treatments can manage symptoms and extend life, the toll of such illnesses on a man in his 8th decade cannot be underestimated. The palace's carefully worded statements about ongoing treatment and positive response do little to quell the growing concern among royal observers that the monarchy may be facing an imminent transition. The anti-monarchy movement gains momentum. This year's Trooping the Colour ceremony was marred not just by the king's visible frailty, but by the increasingly vocal presence of anti-monarchy protesters. The organisation Republic, long a fringe element in British politics, has found its message resonating with a public increasingly skeptical about the relevance and cost of maintaining a royal family in the 21st century. Their protests, focused on the anachronism of royals wearing military uniforms for which they have no operational experience, struck a chord with many Britons. In an era where economic pressures squeeze household budgets, the sight of privileged figures playing dress-up in ceremonial garb while real soldiers struggle with inadequate housing and benefits has become a potent symbol of inequality. The monarchy's defenders argue that these traditions connect Britain to its history, but even among loyalists, there's growing recognition that the institution must evolve or risk becoming irrelevant. The absence of a charismatic figure like the late Queen Elizabeth II, whose personal popularity often insulated the monarchy from criticism, has left the royal family vulnerable in ways not seen since the turbulent 1990s. The William question, a prince prepared but untested. As the king's health falters, attention naturally turns to Prince William, the heir apparent. By all accounts, William has been preparing for kingship with the diligence expected of someone who has spent his entire life in the public eye. His appearances at recent events have shown a man increasingly comfortable with the ceremonial aspects of his role, while his Earthshot Prize initiative demonstrates an attempt to carve out a meaningful platform beyond mere ribbon-cutting. Yet serious questions remain about whether William possesses the political acumen and diplomatic skill needed to navigate the monarchy through what may prove to be its most challenging period since the abdication crisis of 1936. His public persona, while polished, often comes across as carefully controlled to the point of being scripted, a stark contrast to his grandmother's ability to project both regal dignity and authentic warmth. The prince's greatest challenge may lie in bridging the growing generational divide in attitudes toward the monarchy. While older Britons still largely support the institution, younger citizens show increasing indifference at best, outright hostility at worst. William's attempts to modernize the monarchy's image while maintaining its traditions represent a delicate balancing act that even his most seasoned advisors struggle to navigate effectively. The Sussex wound that won't heal. The absence of Prince Harry from the Trooping the Colour ceremony was noted by all, but remarked upon by few within royal circles, a silence more telling than any statement. The rift between the Sussexes and the rest of the royal family has hardened into a permanent schism, with neither side willing to make the concessions necessary for reconciliation. What began as personal disagreements has evolved into an existential threat to the monarchy's carefully cultivated image. Harry and Meghan's continued public commentary, whether through interviews, documentaries, or Harry's memoir, has peeled back the curtain on royal life in ways that undermine the mystique upon which the institution depends. Their allegations of racism, emotional neglect, and institutional indifference have struck at the heart of the monarchy's claim to represent modern British values. The king's attempts to manage this crisis, through a combination of careful silence and occasional legal action, have so far failed to stem the bleeding. Each new revelation from California further erodes public confidence in an institution that depends entirely on perceived moral authority for its continued existence. The Andrew problem, a persistent stain on the royal brand. If the Sussex situation represents a public relations nightmare, the ongoing presence of Prince Andrew within royal circles amounts to an open wound. Though officially stripped of his military titles and royal patronages following the Epstein scandal, Andrew continues to cast a shadow over the monarchy. Recent reports of financial investigations into Andrew's affairs suggest the palace recognizes the ongoing danger he poses. The potential for fresh scandal remains ever present, with civil cases still pending and new allegations periodically surfacing. The king's attempts to marginalize his brother have been only partially successful, as Andrew continues to exploit family connections and royal properties to maintain a semblance of status. This unresolved situation highlights one of the monarchy's fundamental weaknesses, its inability to fully excise problematic elements due to the accident of their birth. In an era increasingly intolerant of unearned privilege and unaccountable power, such contradictions become harder to justify with each passing year. The gathering storm. As Britain heads toward a general election that may bring profound political changes, the monarchy finds itself at a crossroads. The institution that once stood above politics now risks being caught in the crossfire of the nation's culture wars. Republican sentiment, while still not mainstream, has moved from the political fringe to respectable debate. The coming years will test whether the Windsor brand can adapt to survive in a world increasingly skeptical of hereditary privilege. The challenges are manifold: a monarch in uncertain health, an heir still proving himself, renegade family members airing dirty laundry, and a public less inclined to defer to tradition for tradition's sake. What remains unclear is whether the monarchy's decline will be gradual, a slow fading into irrelevance, or whether some future crisis might precipitate a more dramatic fall. For now, the palace continues its careful dance of pageantry and public relations, hoping to maintain the illusion of stability while privately preparing for potential upheaval. One thing seems certain: the next decade will determine whether the British monarchy enters the 22nd century as a revered national institution or a quaint relic of a bygone era. The outcome hangs in the balance, as uncertain as the health of its current king and the willingness of his subjects to keep believing in the fairy tale.